Hello again, and welcome back to one of the lessons that is going to be dedicated to English teachers, so please stay tuned. Hello again, this is Waleed from the Global Language Center in Baghdad. In this video, I'll talk about the lesson planning for English class at any level that the teacher is teaching. One of the possible and hypothetical scenarios that a teacher of English lesson encounters on a daily basis, especially if he's doing routine classes of going in every chapter every day to teach students, is the dilemma of having a lesson for the student. You know, a lesson plan looks like this. It has a body, and the body has a structure of a beginning and the climax part of the lesson, and then ending and a wrap-up part. Now, usually, rule of thumb, as we say in English, is that you have three parts lesson. The first part is an introductory lesson, and in this lesson, you just what you do is to train students to get warmed up and hyped up and psyched up to prepare them to do the main activity or the hard activity or the base activity or the terminal activity. In order to do so, you need to make sure you pre-teach the vocabulary of the lesson so the students get used to use them in the and during the lesson and to the end part of the lesson. And in order to do so, usually you ask them a simple question, or you write down the vocabulary on the whiteboard, and you ask them general direct questions. Do you know these vocabulary? You and your partner just sit and talk about these vocabulary and try to come up with a meaning for every possible vocabulary that you might expect to show up on the surface of this lesson. If you think that the list of vocabulary are going to be limited, what you can do is to jot down the vocabulary on a whiteboard and discuss these vocabulary to students and directly tell them that these are the vocabulary that we will talk about and we will use in the lesson. So you activate the form, meaning, and use of every one of the vocabulary. That ensures that students get higher retention of the information that you'll provide in the lesson post the lesson. You know, usually the interference of the trainer or the teacher or the coach of English should be not exceeding 30 to 70%, where 30% is an interference in the lesson lecturing, and the 70% is collaborative work, peer thinking and sharing among students themselves, collaborative work, trying to come up with a final decision using negotiation, discussions, role plays based on realia and realistic scenarios that the trainer is providing to the students in the classroom. So that creates social relevance and activates the actualization of the lesson that has been taught in the lesson itself by the teacher or the trainer or the coach of English. Now, a lot of teachers encounter the problematic part, which is designing a lesson that works out. You know, we usually base our lesson on two factors: the validity of the lesson and the reliability of the lesson. If the lesson is not valid, the students will not be able to use the taught materials after the lesson is over. And if the lesson is not reliable, it means that the trainer is not going to be able to deliver efficient, coherent, and cohesive lesson to students in the period dedicated for the lesson, or the longevity of the lesson is short, or the lesson lacks or fails to deliver the exact goal to the students, and the teacher ends up teaching something to students, and students end up learning something different from the teacher. To some extent, that's okay, but in general, if the teacher is shooting to teach the students how to use and how to be aware and how to actually understand past simple as an example, and the student end up learning a few vocabulary and that's it, we consider that's a lesson that is not reliable and that the lesson is not quite prepared efficiently. So the main part that we are talking about today is how to design a good lesson plan to students. In order to do so, as an English trainer, you need to read more. Actually, start a book that I do recommend that you start reading is this book, and it's called Teaching English as a Second or Foreign Language. This is very good source for you in order to be able to understand the function of language, the components, the basic components of language, and also how to deliver efficient lesson in the skills, the 6 skills of speaking, reading, listening, writing, vocabulary, and grammar, in addition to the subcategories of functional language and spelling and pronunciation. Usually, a lesson plan, as I mentioned, starts with a simple goal, and that goal is to teach the students something that they will take with them back home after the class is over, and where the teacher is not there to monitor what they're going to say and how they are going to say it and in what context they are going to say it. So if the learners use the lesson to and be able to know what they are going to say, when they are going to say, and how they are going to say, that is exactly the main goal of the lesson plan, and that we are going to that we are talking about right now. The lesson usually, as I mentioned, starts with a warm-up activity, and the warm-up activity has so many varieties, whether that's a speaking activity, thinking activity, critical thinking activity, pronunciation activity. All of that flows into the main part of the lesson and the heart of the lesson, which is the main goal of the lesson itself. Now, in order to be familiar with a few lesson plan samples that have warm-up activities, you can visit simply one of the websites that offer free lesson plans that have many warm-up activities. You can check Busy Teacher. It's a website that provides ready-made and ready-to-use lesson plans. The major part of the lesson is the hard part of the lesson, and it is usually what the teacher is shooting to make students use when they leave the classroom. And that's, for example, past simple, present continuous, past passive voice, or how to use certain vocabulary, or how to teach them how they pronounce certain words in English that have irregular form. All of these can fall into a grammatical category or vocabulary category, or any one of the categories that have to do with the language itself and its functionality, in addition to some literature background. And the ending of the lesson should be a replica of the beginning of the lesson. And we recommend you do recap or you review very quickly the major part of the lesson by the end of the lesson, so the students get enough spaced repetition that ensures that they transfer the information to their mind and actually actualize using it in the classroom and when they leave. And usually and the next week we do recommend that you pretty much do the same thing. You remind them of what they had the week before so they don't forget it. And this spaced repetition that I talked about in previous videos will make students be able to carefully tailor their learning style to the needs of the environment around them. Also, you need to create a kind of social relevance to students with the lesson, so you remind them where they are going to use this, where they are expected to see this, and what their expected response and how it should be. So that's in a nutshell part of the lesson planning course that I dedicated to teachers of English. If you're students of English, or if you're starting your career as an English teacher, this video is useful for you too. Also, you can visit my YouTube channel here to get more information about a few tutorials about English language, and also a few tutorials about how to teach particular parts of the English language to other students when you graduate or upon graduation. Have a good day. This is the English trainer Walid Khalid. Looking forward to see you in another video. Have a great, wonderful day.